Hi, thanks for joining us today, this evening, this morning, whenever you're watching it. I've someone really interesting to talk to today. I'm really looking forward to this. I've Linda Cooley, who's the CEO of Mad River Brewing in Humboldt County in North California. Sorry.
Yes.
So, yeah, Linda, as I said, apart from having an Irish name, actually has an interesting heritage and is running a very interesting brewery because it's, correct me if I'm wrong, it might be the only women-led, tribally owned brewery in the country.
Correct.
So I guess yeah. So let's maybe you can just tell me a little bit of your background first, so we can get then to the brewery and see what you're planning to do and what the whole
Yeah.
meaning of being tribally owned is.
Yeah.
How did you get
So,
into brewing?
yeah, my background, I started in the beer industry on my 21st birthday. I went out, as one does on 21, to have drinks because you can legally drink here in America. And I met someone that let me know that they had a position open in the beer industry and they thought I would be perfect for it. And what they didn't know is my father was a pile driver. He had a pile driving business and he built two Anheuser-Busch breweries and saved his beer cans with his crew every day. And it paid for a pretty big chunk of my college tuition. All my baby pictures have Budweiser cans in them. It's kind of embarrassing. And I took the job at a distributor and it really clicked. I went to college initially to be a social worker and it was so sad. And I ended up in the beer industry and it was fun and it was so much more family oriented than I would have ever guessed. And it was less pushy and sleazy than most industries. It was really about helping people have a good time and match their needs. I stayed in the beer industry throughout my entire career. I was VP of the first organic brewery in history, Eel River. I stayed with Anheuser-Busch and moved around, and then I came home and we purchased Mad River Brewery with my tribe, the Rock tribe.
Okay, so yeah, so I mean, I wish my 21st had gone that way, but here we are. Um, yeah, so you ended up, yeah, I mean, so you had a whole history there. You had a whole history in the beer industry, but Mad
Mhm.
River then itself had been in existence before you bought it.
Correct. So Mad River is 34 years old, and they were part of the original craft beer movement in Northern California and Oregon. In fact, when they first started Mad River, a lot of their equipment came from Sierra Nevada. They started very close, and the two owners of each worked together. And they initially thought they were going to have a brewery together, and they went separate. And so we still have some of Sierra Nevada's equipment here today, which is really fascinating. And I love that deep history. But Mad River had been going for a really long time when we purchased it. It was our 30-year anniversary, and they were just a big staple in craft beer all over the country and the world. They had won numerous Great American Beer Festival awards. And then the time had come where they felt like they were not able to differentiate themselves from other breweries because the market has been just so heavily saturated in 30 years, which is amazing. It's really nice to have so much more variety. And they thought that it would be better in a tribe's hand.
Okay, so yeah, so was that a case that they decided to sell to you, or they decided to sell
Yeah.
and then out of the different options they had, they picked you because it was tribal?
Yeah. They had passed up some offers years past before we met, but they found out I had just moved home and they contacted me knowing that I ran Eel River and said, "Hey, we think this is a good fit. What do you think?" And I let our tribal leadership know, and they decided to do it. We saw a lot of different ways that this could be helpful for not just our tribe, but in general for jobs and branching out into different things and to diversify our economic portfolio. Tribes are mostly grant funded, and getting into business to sustain our livelihood is necessary with all the changes in the world. So we saw it as an opportunity for so many different things, and then to keep this brand going. It's a staple in the beer industry, and to see it die would just be a sad thing.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I obviously being all the way over here, I don't know anything about tribal politics. Was there a big, how do you persuade people that this is where they should invest as a group, as a nation,
Yeah.
should invest the money?
I thought it was going to be a no. There's a lot of stigma with Native Americans and alcohol. There's a lot of false facts out there that we have a different kind of tolerance than anyone else in the world. I thought truly that would be the reason why we would say no, but our leadership all voted on it, and it was a really easy yes. We live in a very remote area in Northern California where there's not a lot of jobs on the reservation. And the people off reservation really don't have tribal jobs. And we thought this was a good way to do it. And also to get our information and what we're doing out there. For a lot of people, they really don't know that there's Native Americans left. It's pretty fascinating, but a way to share what we're doing. We're the largest tribe in California, and we have all these amazing initiatives that don't really get out there. And here we have this platform where you can go to these large stores like Costco or Target or Walmart or Bevmo, and you could pick something up and see that is owned by a tribe and learn about something that you wouldn't normally learn about.
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to some people in different countries, particularly in Africa, and they're really, adamant and they're excited about the beer because of that being able to kind of tell a story. They said, like, even a small little way, it can just get that interest going and get the conversation going. And
Yes.
so, is that what the purpose behind buying it is, to do that promotion of the tribe, or to what's the primary purpose? Is it to support locally, support the tribe members, or to get out how the history of the tribe and the culture?
I think it's numerous things. So, one thing about the Yurok tribe, we're the first on a lot of things. We are really focused on our culture, environment, language. We lead that easy in California. We pride business to really focus on getting our land secure and our language, which are all needed things. But just we're not visibly out there in that large platform. And if we're going to continue to grow like we want to do, we need people to know about us and hear about us and understand and experience that and want to support it. That alone, and fighting some of these stigmas, tokenization, the false fact that Native Americans can't drink. There's so many lies, basically, told about Native Americans, and being able to say things ourselves as opposed to having someone else speak for us is huge. Along with creating jobs that we wouldn't normally have with a tribe, marketing, sales. We do have lab work with all of our water restoration, and being able to give our membership something that they can enjoy wherever they are. We're close to 7,000 members, and we're spread out all over. And if I'm far away and I can pick up a beer can or whatever it is and see my tribe, that's something really exciting. And then also being the first, there's not a lot of tribes that have done the things we have done in general, let alone in beer. This has been uncharted territory, really. There's a few Native American owned breweries. There's not many tribal ones. And so we saw that as an opportunity. And then also have each product dedicated to something that we're fighting for, not just as a Yurok tribe, but as Indigenous people in general across the board. There's a list of so many different things, and it has opened the door. It's created our partnership with San Francisco Giants. It's created our partnerships with these other tribes. We created our own certification for our products as opposed to paying an extreme amount for the government certifications that suppress us. So there's a lot of things there.
Okay, it's I don't know where to start asking anymore, because so maybe just because I'm so ignorant about things, like, how does the tribal is a nation, it is a group, and you're the member. So there is then the leadership, as you said, is I don't know how many is in that. Like, how do they? What level of control are they? Like for you specifically, are they like a board? Are they like
Similar.
very hands off? Or
Yeah, it's kind of like our government in America. We have a president, a vice president, and we call it council, which would be the government, right? So we have a chairperson, a vice chairperson, so president, vice president, and then we have our council members with 6, 7 people, and they really make a lot of decisions for our tribe. Sometimes it's put out to a majority of membership to vote on, but really they're our government that controls things, just like the American government. And tribes, when you are uh, a federally recognized tribe, you have your own sovereign nation and you have your own government of rules and regulations. And since we are such a large tribe, we have our own court, we have our own judges, we have our own water department. We're about to do the biggest dam removal in history. We have so many sections of a government, just the same as America does.
Okay, so it's very much they're very much just going to set the legislation and the rules around how you operate, but they're not like a,
Correct.
that the government isn't kind of dictating your day to day
Yes.
activities or anything. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so the other thing that I mean you mentioned there was like using this as a way to kind of reach out and get the story known. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed. Am I right that you bought it in 2019?
Yes, a couple months before COVID.
Yeah, that's why I was about to ask. So, because I was looking on the website and that, and there's a list of beers, some of which are actually very interesting, but it seemed like a lot of time, maybe your plans have been delayed quite a bit, that your branding is not quite where you wanted it to be just yet, and it's taking time to get there.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, so when we purchased the brewery, our plans were to really dive into tribal e-commerce. California casinos sell the most beer in California, and they're all ran by tribes. And we thought, why is it not tribal beer being sold? Why is it not tribal people having a voice? And really just taking beer as the first one, but everything that you can find in a hotel casino. Why is it not tribes making those products or selling it? Why are we letting other people come in and continuously take this from us? Um, it was just really clear what we needed to do. And then also really work with these large stores like Whole Foods and Safeway that want to tell a story of living a better life and being fair. And then COVID happened.
yeah,
And I don't know what it was like in the rest of the world, but here we had a massive shutdown where everything was shut down for a couple weeks, and then it was only certain businesses that can open. We were one of them because we delivered to stores throughout the state and Oregon and Washington at that time. And then the laws were changing almost every day. So all of our customers outside of grocery stores were shut down for a really long time. And it gave us extra time to pause, and hence why we had time to do the rebranding so fast. We rebranded an entire brewery in 2 years, which is a lot of work in so little time, and not just rebranding, but really thought about each product and what it was going to stand for. Every single one represents something different. And then we thought about important partnerships to get the word out there. When you buy something during COVID, the word doesn't get out about your business and what you're doing. So we knew we needed something larger. And that's when we started working with the California State Parks and the Giants and the San Jose Barracudas. And we really reached out and started touching on tokenization and land back for Native Americans. And now that COVID's over and the economy still has not recovered from what we went through and the world's in a difficult place, we're still doing the same thing. We're just getting smarter about business and continuing doing the same thing.
so it was pretty much, I mean, almost a blessing for you in a way, because it gave you the time that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right. I think that if COVID wouldn't have happened, we would have moved forward with selling more beer, and that branding would have taken significantly longer because we would have just been busy with selling and making
Yeah,
beer.
in reacting to day stuff.
Yeah.
So on the branding, then I noticed like you probably have more, but I noticed like there's one about maize, maize related, and obviously that's important to Native Americans. The whole, maize has a real importance. But I was wondering about how do you go about branding it, because I know again from over here, like there is this risk of it becoming almost a cliche, and when people are you know, complaining about, say, the sports teams, like, in Washington, that about the name of how do you strike that balance? It can be, I would assume, like, you don't want to just shove, the cliched symbols of, say, headdresses or whatever, I don't know, up on the things, but you want to tell the story. So is that difficult to balance?
I think that's difficult for most businesses, including some tribal businesses. For us, it was really clear our tribe is very deep into culture and we hold that true. We have a whole culture department that regulates on what we can and can't use. And I'm super thankful for that, as opposed to bringing culture into any of our products. We decided to do endeavors that we're fighting for dam removal. We had Undammed, a seltzer. We have partnership with the California State Park. So we have Historic State Park IPA and Canyon of Dreams. Everything instead goes for something that we are fighting for right now. What is a hot topic that we need currently, as opposed to culture? And even the images you see on our can, we have a basket design that we call the sturgeon design that's on every can. But outside of that, you will not see tribal images because those are sacred. And we don't feel that we should have to sing and dance to sell our product. And for me personally, I also wanted to set the example of how you could have an Indigenous product and not sell out on culture and not tokenize ourselves.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. Like, I mean, the risk, and probably, yeah, like you said, like, this is just from an outsider's point of view, that being an outsider, I would probably go way over the line and be the thing, and that's the same. So but no, it's interesting that you've kind of have this whole rules around it already, and that it's not, that you're not playing it up and you're not playing too much to the gallery of what you're doing, which is interesting. So what the other aspect of what you're doing is you're women led. What's like, how does that, are all the people there women? Are they, how do you
No,
manage?
most of our leadership, all of our leadership except one, is female. And it wasn't necessarily on purpose, which is crazy. Um, Obviously, there's me. I've spent my entire career in beer. And even that alone, when I first started in this industry, I would have never thought that a female could be a CEO of a brewery, which is unbelievable. I'm 42. So at the beginning of my career at 21, I thought that was impossible. I thought women would never be in that position. To see that progression fast. Head of marketing is female. Our sales director, GM, is female. Our CFO is female. Our taproom manager is female. Uh, it just ended up that way, and I think that also helps makes us just a little bit different. We take a different approach to things. We're really sensitive to topics that are important now, especially in the day and age we live in. We don't live in the past. The beer industry right now is very different than it was 10 years ago, and to be able to stay up with that and the times and what's appropriate now is different than what was appropriate then. And I think it gives us a little bit of a different flair and a leg up. But we definitely have our male employees and they're wonderful. And I would think that you would have to be wonderful to work with a bunch of women. We're really lucky. Our men here, I can honestly say for the first time in my life, I work with all men that are wonderful and would never do anything to make any of us feel any different.
Yeah, because you said at the start that, when you started in the industry, that it wasn't sleazy, it wasn't this, but you keep hearing stories about it being quite a sexist, misogynistic
Mm-hmm.
trend through it. So I was kind of surprised to hear you say that even from the beginning it was. But then again, you were working with reasonably large businesses at that stage, which probably
Right.
knew better. Like, it wasn't all startup.
Yeah.
So so you also have a tap room. Is that, like, I'm wondering here what you're about your distribution, basically. Like, it's
Yeah.
a tap room. Is it
Yeah.
down to,
No, we're spread out. We are all throughout California. We're in large chain stores across the state. We are distributed from all the way from Southern California and Northern California. And then we also have a tap room right next door to us that serves locally. And it's a great place just to taste things and then try our beers before we put them in packages and sell them mainstream. Also, this brewery, we're in a really small town. This brewery to our community is a big part of history. And even though it's alcohol, we have 6 breweries here in Humboldt County, 5 or 6. And they're such a staple to the community. It's truly a family thing. Our brewery here, the tap room, it's mostly families that come here. We're dog friendly, and there's a lot of regulars. So they all kind of get to be part of our development and tell us their opinion and tell us what they think is working good or what we should do. And that makes all the difference.
And what's the kind of the divide, if there is one, among that kind of population? Are they mainly tribal? Are they other ethnicities
Yeah,
or ages?
it's really all, especially in, we weren't here long enough before COVID. I don't necessarily know exactly what that looked like, but I think there's definitely more tribal members and Native people coming now than there was before, if I had to guess. Uh, but it's still a combination, and it's truly all ages. You can walk in and see a very young family, or you could see two 21-year-olds, or you can see a 90-year-old that's coming for some music and dancing. It's really everyone. And it's really interesting to see the new customers we've attracted since we've taken over the brewery, and they're excited about what we're doing and they want to follow up on the stories and hear what we're doing next. And it's also really interesting now they're interested in the tribe alone. So if they become a fan of Mad River, they want to follow what our tribe is doing as well, which is part of the goal, but also really amazing to have a platform to educate people about Native Americans.
Yeah. And is the tap room, again, how's your branding in there?
Mm-hmm.
How kind of
Yeah,
versus, what is that? From
yeah,
what you've said on your other branding, it's not kind of in your face. So
same thing. It's the same thing. We have our sturgeon design up at the top of our walls. Everything else is normal. Our posters are our beer labels, and we don't over tokenize. We don't share a lot of things that will dip into culture. It's the same thing. It's really classy and simple and not over the top. We leave that. If you want more of that, then you would go to a tribal event. It's not our job to dip into that. Um, yeah, it's the same as our packaging.
yeah, I guess, and again, I'm drawing the thing about being being cliche, and then you have like here, Irish bars which have gone the other way, and none of us,
Yeah.
that. Whereas we get kind of used that way as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same on both ends.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I mean, I know personally, you go over, been to America, been to other countries, and sometimes you just walk into one and go, no, cannot stay here.
Yep. There's a lot of those. There's a lot of those.
So, so the beers then, if I noticed right, I mean, you have. I was actually a little surprised on what I saw as the beers, because I would have associated the part of California with very much with kind of IPAs and very heavy
Mhm.
IPAs. But you have a much broader range of beers than I kind of was expecting. Like there's red ales, there's porters, is that,
Yeah.
what's the decision behind that? Is like who are drinking those? Is that just a new, more demand driven thing, or?
Yeah, so we have the core beers that Mad River has always had. I cleaned up a few, not all of them were selling really well, and some of them sold better after we rebranded. But by the time we purchased it and we got into COVID, the large IPAs were going out of trend. And we have to consistently stay on top of trending and what's selling, because we can make the best quadruple hazy, but that's not what the general populace, that's not what Safeway's buying or Target or Venmo. We have to also cater to those needs of the stores are looking for this flavor, this style, this next year. And then also being honest with what we're good at and what we're not. There was the hazy craze of IPAs, and it's really expensive to make a hazy, and that's just not our specialty. So as opposed to dipping into that, we've decided to pause, and if we can't get on trend with something, we're not going to do it because it just won't work. Even our seltzer we created during the big beginning of the seltzer craze, as opposed to doing it like most businesses do, where they either had art alcohol and clarify it. We brewed ours like beer with hops because that's what we do. We make beer. And then all of our other ones, our red ale is a Jamaican style ale where we use traditional Jamaica seasoning and flavors. And then our newest one, the Maize Goddess, still the highest beer sellers in California are Modelo and Corona. And I don't know if you want me to touch on why we created that, but
Yeah.
that was our that and the seltzer was our really big beer of getting on a trend before it happened. We were looking at all the casinos' numbers, and the Mexican lagers still outsold everything. And the heavy IPAs are leaving. We're now into session ales and lagers. But we couldn't just make a Mexican lager because we don't make anything easy on ourselves. The term Mexican lager is super tokenizing, and it's a shame that we have a lot of non-Hispanic people making Mexican lagers. So I had to create our own style of beer, Indigenous ale. And we worked with another tribe, the Iowa tribe in Nebraska, Kansas, and they grow this really rare red corn from Aztec village that only they can grow. They do regenerative growth where they're not wasting water or land. And we thought, let's make a lager with corn. Like, let's try it. And it didn't take very long until we feel like we just hit it with the money and we were able to use a tribal product and create something different. And then also hopefully bring awareness that there's tokenizing terms across the board. Mexican lager isn't appropriate. However, us and everyone from South America and other, we're all Indigenous, and that's more of an inclusive word. And we rolled out Indigenous Ale, Maize Goddess, which is a very similar feel. It's similar to a Modelo and a light beer, and we're under that low alcohol content, which is on trend. And the name itself, I was researching just the culture, and I'm not as familiar with it as my own culture, but I was trying to get inspiration for the name. And I stumbled upon the story about the Maize Goddess, and I won't try to pronounce the name appropriately. And the Aztec believed that she created life from corn dough, and she governed agriculture and love and passion. And it reminded me that traditionally for Indigenous people, women are life givers, and we respect them and we work with them. And I think about how far apart we are in this day and age with women. And when you see women with beer, it's sexualized and it's this crazy image. And what if we could do something giving tribute to this maize goddess that the Aztec people felt so important while being able to use this traditional corn and have this beer that is better than others, it's non-tokenizing. And that's truly how we come up with each product. We look at the trends and we think, can we, first of all, make it the best possible? And then how can we tie this into our core beliefs? And if it doesn't fit in that, then we don't do it.
Okay. And that raises the point. I mean, you went out and you looked and you found this tribe that was growing. So is that something that you're planning to do more of, to try and get more local or tribal ingredients in?
Yes. Yeah. Every tribe is either growing something or has a natural resource of a flavor or a plant or something that we can use, and really sticking with that and bringing awareness to it and highlighting the tribe that we're working with and supplying more jobs to tribal members. It was really hard when we decided to use this corn to even have someone mill the corn for us. It was almost impossible for them to get someone to do that for them. And that's still a big reality in America, is tribes have a hard time doing business. We have a hard time with banks. We have a hard time opening that door. So we definitely will keep down that road.
Okay, that's. I'm surprised at that nobody would mill it, because I would have thought. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. At that level of stuff. But yeah, that brings me back around. Then, I mean, as you were saying that, there's kind of cliches or images about Native Americans and drink and beer and not being able to handle it and all of this. And sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Yeah. So there's all these cliches, and from what you're saying, that none of those are true. People do drink beer. So is it because of that banking, or because of why are there not more Native Americans? I saw some figure recently, not just Native Americans, but, minorities as a whole are just such a tiny, tiny part of the American beer industry. And I was wondering, is that structural? Is that a banking thing? Is it just that people don't think they can? What do you think is the reason?
My personal opinion is I think there's inherent racism in our country that is not going to go away. I don't know if everyone sees the value in having diverse things. I see a lot of large businesses put up these great images. We support whoever. It's Pride Month, or it's Native American Month, it's African American Month, but their actions aren't showing that. I don't think America is as progressive as we think, especially with race. I know for us, even though Mad River is a 30-year business and it's taken this long, there is zero favoritism, and it's really hard to get space in a store when you're a small craft brewery. It's almost impossible. And when you're also up against being a minority business and other businesses don't want to invest in you, it's twice as hard. And why even try? You are going to get ridiculed either way. You'll get ridiculed by some of your people saying, why are you doing alcohol? And you'll get ridiculed by people who also don't want to support whatever ethnicity you are. It's pretty intense. And the ones that do succeed, I feel like they're an example of how we all should be. And I also feel that all of us that are minorities should be there supporting each other more. Even the Brewers Association, I don't feel support many minority groups. They'll pick a couple and they'll go off those two, and that's all there is. It's just, there's no recognition. I think, especially with Native Americans, the reality is, and I might get hated for saying this, the Native American history is really hard to address. When someone stands up to salute the flag and say this country is built on freedom, I could look at them and say, my grandmother was raped and beat. It was not built on freedom for me. And it's a true statement, and you can't really argue with that. And so it's easier just to not talk about it and sweep it under the rug, in my opinion.
Right. No, it makes sense. There's no, I don't think anybody could kind of deny, it is history.
Right.
Even at that, it's, even treaties were broken, and, they should have at least, if you'd had a treaty with someone, then you think the courts would have enforced that. But, I think everybody knows the difficulties and the history. So, yeah, I guess, again, coming from outside, you kind of have a slightly different image. There is racism, there are problems, but you still have a thing that maybe it's a little bit better than it really is,
Right. I think that there's a lot of opportunity. And right now, it seems, especially for Indigenous people, we're having more of a voice. And I think if we keep pushing that, it's not going to be as hard. And a lot of it's education. A lot of people seem to be under the belief that we all get free money and that we have this easy street and we have free college. And that's really not the case. And I think educating people and letting them know we're still up against really hard things, and our blood is, Native American blood is the only one measured like animals, which that alone is unbelievable. And unfortunately, it's uncomfortable, but the more we speak about it and the more you see us, the more we're able to tell our own stories. Hopefully that gets easier.
Yeah. And because, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but like each of the tribes, they're at different financial, economic levels as well. Like some have become very wealthy now, as I understand it, but some are still very, very poverty stricken.
Correct. We're one of them. Yeah, we're up in this really secluded area in Northern California. A lot of our tribal members still don't have power, and they run out of running water significantly. Internet's a big issue. Just groceries. We have one tiny store, and the deliveries don't always make it. We're in a food desert. There's a lot of tribes like that. And so how can you grow economics and education when you don't even have power and electricity? And getting those things are so much harder when the government doesn't see value in it unless there's a reward for them in a little bit. It's challenging.
Yeah. Because I'll just throw in the story because you might not know it. I think it's a fascinating story about the Choctaw, which I only recently discovered. I knew part of the story, but back in around 1845, like when the famine was happening in Ireland, it was just a few years after the Choctaw had been basically moved and had gone through there. They'd been marched across the country, and a huge number had died. But when seemingly they were completely poverty stricken, they were dumped on other people's land and told get on with it. But they heard about the famine in Ireland, and they raised not a huge amount of money, but for the situation they were in, they raised an awful lot of money and sent it over to Ireland to the famine victims. And that always struck me as, that it always struck me that there's a link between Ireland and Native Americans because of that. And it's never been quite forgotten here, and there's a few things. But as I understand it now, the Choctaw have become a very rich nation. So it's
yeah. I think that it's humanity. The Irish, as we spoke about earlier, I'm part Irish as well. They were treated horribly. They were treated like slaves, and they were outcasted. And I don't know a lot about what's happening in Ireland, but I hear that it's not always easy. And I think that Native Americans can relate to that. We have a lot of Irish blood, especially in California Indians and the East Coast. We're really integrated in that way. And we're also both profiled as drunk messes. So we can cheers over that.
yeah.
I'm part Irish and part Native American. I'm the worst combo, and I think they're both the best.
Yeah, no, but that yeah, I mean, like you said, we kind of understand that being kind of profiled and being kind of, we've been made it still happens today. I mean, it still happens with the Irish. But where are you going? So let me ask you this. You have this great, you know where you're going with the brewery, you know what you want to achieve, and it's more than just brewing beer. Though you want to brew the best beer you can, but you've got more to it. How does that affect on say a day-to-day basis of what you're doing? Does it make your job any different than any other brewery CEO, or does it?
Yes. When we first purchased the brewery, I don't think I was aware of how much the other part would be important and how many other things it would raise. I've had so many people all over reach out and say things. Just having a Native American voice out there, that's a big thing. Being a Native American woman and being in a CEO role is a big deal. Fighting against tokenization. When we started the partnership with the Giants, that was really huge. We were the first tribe and business to be able to sell actual tribal products in a professional sports stadium ever. There's been partnerships and there's the Redskins, whatever. But I went to the Giants and I asked if we could be our own voice and have a seat at the table, and they heard us. I think that it makes my job harder and longer. I almost have two jobs in one. There's the one where I'm the CEO of the beer and I'm focused on that and really thinking about the beer industry. And then I'm also a Native American woman with a daughter and see all these things that are not fair in our country and our world. And like all the other Yurok tribal members, I can't just sit here and be quiet. I need to figure out what we can do to help bringing it up. And for the brewery, as opposed to complaining about things and showing the negative, I've decided to focus on the positive. For example, as opposed to saying, hey, all you teams don't tokenize. Instead, we found a professional team that wanted to do the opposite. And I think elevating them and saying, this is the right way to do it. Can we give them a high five? Whether you like the Giants or our beer or not, this is a big step forward for all ethnic races. I think that's more of the route we need to go, and also equal pay and fairness in business. There's so many things I did not realize would be important.
Right. I was going to ask you, like, how do you see the future going? It's obvious where you want it to go, but it sounds like you think you've still got an awful lot of work ahead of you.
Yes, I do. But that's okay. That's what we're here for. I think I really want to create our own category in craft beer and have an Indigenous category where it's not just American, Native Americans, but all Indigenous people. We deserve it. There's categories for everything else. I don't know why we don't, and not just in beer. I think we should have in all grocery sectors. And every day, at least once a week, I'm emailing Amazon and Whole Foods saying it's going to happen. You should help us. We need an Indigenous category.
And
cool.
And are you getting much response back?
Yes and no. It's really hard. And it's really hard when you see these businesses say, we are so inclusive and we want to, everything's organic.
And
makes you wonder. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating, we haven't really touched on, well, we did touch on the beers, but I mean, I'm assuming from what you said, like, the other part that came across from here without touching specifically, like, is that you want to make this you want the branding, you want all this, but at the end of the day, you want to make a great beer as well. That's kind of what came across as well, without our specifically saying it. And is that
Quality, yeah, quality, and then going to the next level and expecting the best. There's a lot of products out there, beer or not, that are just not always that great, and you can tell there's not a lot of thought put into it. We also have green waste awards. We don't have waste at our brewery.
okay?
And keeping it green and clean and doing the best you can, it's so important, especially in an oversaturated industry. And when we're trying to be the leaders in a certain sector, setting the precedent for having the best ingredients that are affordable and having that conversation. It would be great if I had a quadruple organic something, but it's not affordable.
Yeah.
Bringing all that up, it's critical.
And do you feel any pressure on that you're afraid of maybe making some sort of a slip, a decision that someone will come and attack you over,
Oh man, I think that just being a Native American female, I've been attacked enough. There's been a lot just of that. So the beer hasn't been an issue, thank goodness, yet. But also, we've really stuck with things that are hard to argue. We have 2 beers dedicated to our partnership with the state parks. California State Parks asked if we could have a beer together, which is unbelievable. It's right there. They all signed it. So we've been able to do things that I don't know if you can argue. And I make sure that they're not offensive. They're not political. I stay out of that when it comes to beer, because at the end of the day, we're a business and we have to make money. So we need people to buy it, and making sure that you're expressing your message without offending people. It's really important.
And so I'll let you go now, because I know you probably have to get back to work pretty soon. But where do you see, I mean, you've mentioned here a new category, for Indigenous. Where do you see other Indigenous groups like Native Americans, whatever other groups are there as well? Where do you see them going? I mean, it sounds like Native Americans, the tribal structure gives you something to work with, whereas maybe, as you said, Mexicans, that it's more individuals having to have to fight their way in. So do you think the tribal structure is something that's going to be important for other tribes?
I do. We have a lot of tribes currently building breweries, trying to get in it. And not just breweries, but beverage and things in general, right? And tribes are really starting to see that we need to be economically independent, not rely on the government and grant money. And it's starting to happen, us really banding together. We have a lot of the business in California and beyond that, and making sure that we're working better together. I think it's going to grow. You can already see it in the mainstream media. There's a couple of Native American models on the high end out there, which I am shocked it's never happened before. There's Native American movies now that are taken seriously. I think it's going to continue to grow, and I think that there's going to be a big conglomerate soon. And I also think, I know with my goals, I would really like to use a lot of the United States laws in our favor and share that. That's our right, and I think we could get better at that.
Right. So, and that just did struck me. One of the things that being, like you mentioned, conglomerates, that when an individual sets up a brewery, eventually there's a huge chance that they'll sell it to a big conglomerate. Whereas being tribally owned, it almost, it's very unlikely that it's going to be sold later. It is a community resource.
Correct. And I think that we are working with other tribes more. We have a lot of partnerships with tribes. I think helping other tribes get to where we're at. And then also, if a tribal entity was to sell, to go to another tribe and make sure that we're part of the growth and keeping it in Indian country. It's really important. I think COVID really helped us because we were all stuck at home and having to be on social media. Working together is just so much better. And I've never seen Indian country work together like it is now. And it's going to grow.
Okay, well, I think that's a positive note to end on, really, because that's hopefully we will see. I mean, it'll probably take a long time before any of it reaches across the Atlantic and we get to actually try the beers over here. But yeah, it's positive.
It's hopeful. You never know.
Yeah, I might have to go to California sometime.
Yes. Yes, you should come to California. And when you do, let me know. You
I
can meet
will.
my Irish family. We can go to the res. It would be so fun.
Yeah, it's God. I want to go now. But anyway, sometime
Yeah.
soon. Sometimes I know
Yeah.
it would be. It would be amazing. But listen. That is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask that you wanted to cover, and I kind of stupidly glossed
Oh no,
over?
not stupid. No, I just think it's really amazing and helpful when every single person asks a question or shares it because it helps us. And even though it seems like it doesn't, the fact that you're in a country where beer's not even, just sharing one thing will spark interest in someone else. And I think it's just really important that people understand, even if you're not purchasing something and you believe in it, even just sharing it in any way possible drastically helps it.
Excellent. Okay, well, listen, Linda, thanks a million for the time. Really, really enjoyed it. There's whole areas there that I had maybe just some very slight ideas about, and probably some cliches in my mind as well. But really, really enjoyed it. Thanks a million.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.